Hello and welcome back to Zero Cool Gaming, and today I'm going to be doing a review of a game called Bulletstorm.
Calm down. Just calm down. You got this all wrong. Just listen to me.
Here, have another drink, Gray. It'll help your aim.
Please.
Here, use my gun. I keep a sight a few inches off the target.
Nice.
Challenge yourself.
The sooner you answer our questions, the better the odds we don't miss a bottle and evaporate your face.
Okay, stop. Okay, please. I'll tell you whatever you want. Okay? Whatever you want to know. Whatever you want to know.
What's the bounty on our heads?
You worth $500 million per. Doubled after you raided that Confederate supply liner. Serrano himself put out the mark. $500 million. Not bad.
Maybe for you.
Alright, so what is Bulletstorm? Well, put simply, it's a first-person shooter. I mean, that's the easiest way to define the game. But what makes this particular first-person shooter enjoyable is the story that goes along with it. The game itself is relatively short. It only takes 5 to 10 hours to get through it. If you really know what you're doing, you could probably get it done in, 5 hours. If you're working your way through it and you gotta figure stuff out as you go, it'll probably take, 10 hours, which is how long I think it took me. So a relatively short game. And I'm not much of one to enjoy short games. But I did get a kick, at the very least, out of this story. There were parts of this story that I absolutely hated, and other parts of it that I found redeemable. It just depends on which part you're talking about. So, just being curious, when did this game come out? Yeah, looks like 2013. Man, I am so blind, to be quite honest with you. I got the limited edition, which has, a bunch of the extra stuff with it. But regardless. So the game starts out with you on your ship with another guy who I think is your son. Not quite positive on that. They definitely had some odd conversation, let's put it that way. And you are in front of a guy that's been duct taped and had a bottle duct taped to his head. And you're threatening to kill him if he doesn't give you the information that you want. And the only information that you actually ask him is, how much is the bounty on your head? And he tells you how much the bounty on your head is. And then you kick him into the I guess a dock station. And you open the outer doors, and he gets blown out into space. And while you're having a discussion with the other guy, somehow he's not dead, and he floats up to one of the windows on the ship and puts a bomb on it, which blows the window out, and before you get sucked out into deep space, you're able to pin yourself to a wall and then work your way toward the emergency shutters. After which you make your way to the command deck because you came out of warp right in front of a giant warship. And it happens to be the warship of the man you're trying to kill. So you and your team have an argument about attacking this thing because it's huge. And you eventually attack it anyway. And after you badly damage the ship, you crash land on the planet below. A couple of your teammates are injured, or crewmates I should say. And one of them in particular is still alive and you want to try to save his life. So you take him down to the med bay, and the doctor tells you that basically he needs a battery in order to get the med bay functional. And he tells you that there are batteries in the drop pods from the ship that you attacked, or the escape pods. And you make your way out of the ship onto a hostile planet filled with people that want to kill you. And eventually you make your way to one of the drop pods and you acquire the battery that's in it, and you take that back to your own ship and put it into the module of the medical bay, and the doctor tells you to get out of the room. He sterilizes it and cleans up, your buddy that you're trying to save, and then he'll do the operation needed to save his life. While all that's going on, the native population starts cutting their way into your ship, and eventually a couple of them make their way into the med bay, and I don't know exactly what caused all the smoke in the med bay to appear, but a bunch of smoke appears. You have no idea what's going on inside, and you're being assaulted by even more natives of the planet in the room that you're in. So you fight through all of them, and then you're worried about your buddy who's on the operating table, and whether or not the doc is even still alive. So quite a few things happen really quickly. And you also get a cutscene that is a flashback as to what brought you to where you are now. And essentially, you were an assassination team for a corrupt general who had you killing what you as a soldier would consider innocent civilians to benefit his military endeavors. And the man that you just finished killing was a journalist who had a lot of information about you and your team and the assassinations that you'd carried out over the years. And upon reading all this information, which was contradictory to the files you were given and the information that you were given on your targets, you decide to call the general and ask him about it. And of course he yells at you for all of that, and basically tells you, you're a soldier, this, that, and the other. You'll do what you're told, and you'll be happy that you did so. You weren't happy about that, truly. So you start to fight your way out of this building to make your way back to your ship, and hope that the military doesn't start hunting you down as, traitors, renegades, mutineers. I don't know exactly what they label you as yet. But for whatever they would label you as, you're trying to get out of there before they have the paperwork in order to go after you properly. And that's basically how this whole mess started. Is you being lied to about the targets that you were killing, and the general being a corrupt piece of shit that doesn't really give a damn about you or your team. He just wanted people assassinated for whatever reason. and he didn't want people who would ask questions in the process. Alright, so the ship that they're on blows up, but the guy who was in the medical bay, I believe his name is Ishii, survived, but his cybernetic augmentations in his brain are altering his personality. And the first thing that he needs to get a hold of is power to recharge his augmentations, because if they fail, he will die. And they work toward doing that while Ishii constantly berates and insults him for basically everything he's ever done. And the banter between these two is what makes this game fun to play. It kinda is the storyline. But on top of that, they find a communicator on one of the elite soldiers, and that communicator connects them obviously with the enemy's communications, and they use that to identify one of the commanding officers, and they use that signal to track down the commanding officer herself. As well, the general that the main character wants to kill is also alive and well on this planet, and they would like to kill him, but they need to take him hostage so that they can secure passage off this, or so that they can secure passage off this world, because this world is extremely hostile for some reason. And the further that they get into this world, the more odd things become. You see that there's an entire city that was built here, like a nice city, something that these gang members would not have been able to A, build, or B, even maintain, which is why they're starting to fall apart. They find unusually large indigenous creatures on this planet that are quite hostile toward their existence. And as they continue to work their way through the city, they end up running into one of the indigenous creatures, a large one, that has been, for the most part, turned into a robot, and has a controller that one of the gang members actually had on him. So you take the controller and you use that to control this large beast to essentially destroy obstacles in your path and help you take down enemies as you move forward. But eventually the monster goes a little haywire, busts through a wall, falls into a ravine, and gets itself destroyed. And the further you move through this city, you start to notice that some of the gang members themselves have been tortured and mutilated by something else. And you find a few of the more mutated gang members in the process, and you're guessing that it was these guys that mutilated the other guys. Of course, you can't be for sure, but that's the theory you're going with currently. You finally catch up with the enemy commander or officer, and she threatens to kill you, destroys the bridge as she runs away from you, and of course you've got to take the long way around through all the enemies to get back on her trail. And truly, you're just using her anyway because you know that she will eventually lead you to your target regardless. So it doesn't matter if she's in your crew or not. Her purpose is still being served. And if I remember correctly, I'm not going to go ahead and spoil it now, but there are a few twists and turns through this game as you travel through it. And there's plenty of hints dropped to that fact as you move your way through the game. Foreshadowing is pretty heavy in it. Like I said, the storyline's nothing, grand or great or spectacular. It absolutely isn't. But it does throw a few curveballs in there for you. Just, spice it up a little bit, have some fun with it. This game is truly just about being entertaining. It's not really trying to push a message or force propaganda down your throat. There are a few instances of the message being pushed in this game, surprisingly, but it's not done in a way that it actually bothers me. It's done the way that it should be done, which is nonchalant, and yes, this thing exists. That's as far as you should go with it. Whether people agree with it or disagree with it, it shouldn't be forced down their throat one way or the other. Period. This game does, try to hand fist the idea of it being okay down your throat, which I don't agree with at all. But it's a hell of a lot better than what they're producing today. I mean, it's at least trying to be middle of the road, even though it's quite obvious that they're being told not to be by their, what would those be called? Their diversity manager, the ethics committee, the sensitivity reader. All of this sick, twisted shit that doesn't need to exist in any company, and yet does because of investment capital that has been put into these companies. And those investment companies demand that their policies of ESG and DEI, or DIE initiative as I like to call it, are enforced within the company itself. And as long as companies enforce these policies, these investors will continue to invest their capital into their company. It's sick, it's twisted, it's wrong in every way imaginable. And you can see evidence of it in this game. It's just not the strong arm, shove it down your throat whether you like it or not way that they do it today. So of course they chase after the woman, and eventually they do catch up with her after she was captured by the gangs, or actually I guess she was captured by the mutants on this planet. And they rescue her from the mutants, and after doing so, she agrees to be part of their team, and they begin their trek toward the general. Along the way, the main character asks her a few questions about, kind of like what they were doing here, what was their mission on this world, and she explains to him that they were to establish a green zone and then do a full-scale investigation of the planet itself to determine whether or not this planet was salvageable and could be recolonized. And then Ichi gets kidnapped by a plant, and they have to hunt that down. And then shortly after well, I should say before he gets captured by the plant and they have to go rescue him, Ichi shoots a ladder out from underneath her because she tried to escape, and then he starts beating her half to death before the main character has enough time to step in and stop him. And then they have to rescue him, which does change his attitude a little bit. Not much, but he's a little nicer afterwards. His AI and cybernetic augmentations are really playing hell with him, making it very difficult for him to determine friend or foe. But finally, the main character gets her to explain kind of exactly what happened to this world, at least as far as she knows. And she explains that there was a colony established here, and then for some reason the supply lines stopped coming to the world, and after they ran out of supplies, of course, people started to lose it. Gangs were formed, violence erupted, and then people started to mutate, and the plant life started to mutate, and the native animals started to mutate. And now you have still gangs, you have the mutants, and then you have what she calls the fully mutated. And she didn't explain what that looks like, she just said when you see one, you'll know it. One fully mutated wiped out an entire elite special ops force of the generals. And all of this does tie in to the bigger story that happened here. We don't know why all of this stuff started to mutate. And we don't know why the supply lines stopped coming to the planet. And when I say supply lines, I mean spaceships filled with supplies that were needed to maintain this colony, because they were not self-sustainable yet. They may have been working on becoming that way, but they hadn't become self-sustaining yet. So there's several things that are going unanswered, and some things that just don't make sense, truly. But they continue to work their way toward the general. And while though the unit cohesion is basically zero, at least they're not shooting at each other. Alright, so the dynamics on this world are a little odd, to say the least. Basically, you had what amounted to a normal city on the surface. And then underground, you had a giant waste disposal factory. And because of the nature of the waste that it was disposing of, they decided that it would be a good idea to use criminals, prisoners, as the labor force for the underground facility. And the people on the surface had no idea that those facilities even existed. So a lot of the material that was being disposed of was radioactive and mutagenic. So when the prisoners revolted underground and went to the surface and started attacking the civilians went underground to hide from the prisoners. And by this point, all of the safeties that were in place to relatively keep the prisoners safe from the waste material were no longer active. So the citizens ended up mutating while they were down there and became the cannibal mutants that started eating the gang members, which were the prisoners. And then, of course, as that process continued and the contamination got worse, the plants were contaminated, the wildlife got contaminated, and radically altered as a result. And just in case the general's team came to the conclusion that this planet couldn't be salvaged, he was given a DNA bomb, is what he calls it. But basically it's an exterminatus bomb. It's designed to kill everything living on the surface of the planet. So, because he had already made the determination that the planet was unsalvageable, he had already armed this bomb just before his ship was attacked. Like, literally, he just finished arming it, they hadn't launched it yet, and he attacks the ship, and then the ship crashes on the planet. So they now have to help the general turn the bomb off, or none of them are going to survive this. The girl is actually the same girl that was the daughter of the journalist that they had killed 10 years prior to this. So when she heard that they had killed a journalist, she asked which one, and they gave her her father's name, which didn't make her none too happy, to be quite honest with you. And of course he told her that, the general ordered his assassination along with several other assassinations, and that's why these guys hate him, and they're trying to kill him, and have been for 10 years. But regardless, she wanted to have some words with the general herself. And while though the general did refuse to answer her questions, he did push her off the edge of a building, which in and of itself did answer her question. She survived that, and after the bomb was deactivated and the guys were trapped in the room because the general trapped them in there so that he could escape, she did rescue them from their prison on board the ship. And then the three of them set off to go find the good general and hopefully get off of this planet before it kills them. So they make it to the general. There's a big battle that ensues. Eventually, he injures the general at least, and they get dropped back down to the planet from the rescue ship. Now, the girl comes up with a plan to make it back to the downed spaceship and then use one of the escape pods to escape the planet's surface, because when they thought they were disabling the DNA bomb, what they were actually doing was activating the darn thing. And they escaped the planet just before it goes off, and then the two survivors, since Ishii died, being the main character and the girl, kind of make a pact with each other to go after the general and finish the job. And that's basically the end of the game. Leaving it wide open for another one, obviously. So yeah, it's all pretty sick and twisted. At least the way the general handled his men and what he had them do, and how he lied to pretty much everyone around him. But as far as the game itself, it's got some interesting parts to it. It's got, an upgradable gun. You get several different types of, or you can acquire different types of weapons as you go through the game. But really, the only two that you need are your upgraded gun and your sniper rifle. And you can upgrade those too. I mean, you can make it easier for those guns to kill the enemy, is probably the best way of putting that. So, other than that, I mean, it's just a basic third-person shooter. Shoot 'em up, bang 'em up. Try to have a good time while watching the show. And it's, like I said, it's not that bad of a story. They weren't full woke yet. Now, EA does get there, and it's only a couple of years from this point before they are. And they get to the point that I stopped purchasing their games. And actually, I think this is one of the last games that I actually purchased from EA. Other than the Need for Speed, which doesn't really have a story. And there was reasons for that. Because their stories were getting more and more twisted to an ideology that I absolutely disagreed with. And I wanted no part of that. And the reason that I say that is because if you sit here and play a game, and I know that this is a short game, but longer games, the ones that are 60, 100, 200 hours, and you're constantly having this message bullshit thrown in your face and shoved down your throat, that crap's gonna brainwash, at the very least, even if it doesn't full-on brainwash your dumbass, it's gonna have an effect on how you think. It'll twist your thinking just slightly because of how long you engaged with it. And they know that. That's why they're doing it. That's how sick and twisted these people are. They hope that the more you engage with their disgusting message, the more you will be twisted to agree with it.
You still ain't shit, boy. Long as you're dead, I don't care what I am. Trishka, you're all right, darling? Gonna get you out of here.
Is Serrano...
Serrano's done. Brutally, I might add. Paid back for every family he destroyed. Every innocent he used me to kill.
I know he manipulated you, Gray. I get it. I don't blame you. I don't...
That's sweeter than teenage poontang.
Ah, crap.
I hope it'll comfort you as you fall to your death.
Anyway, that's my rant for the day. I hope that you enjoy the rest of yours. If you could hit the like, subscribe, rumble, follow buttons, all that does help. And I will talk to you later.